Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take something you've probably heard about, maybe even quoted, but haven't really, deep dived into.
Uh-huh.
Today, it's Sun Tzu's The Art of War. It's got this almost mythical feel, doesn't it?
It really does, and it pops up everywhere, military, business, even self-help sometimes, for, what, over 2,000 years?
Exactly. So our mission here is simple. Give you the shortcut. We want you to really get this classic. We're using Thomas Cleary's translation, digging out the key insights.
And going beyond just the famous one-liners people throw around.
Right. We want to explore the history, the context, and the really profound practical stuff in these pages.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Let's start with the man himself, or the legend, Sun Tzu. Who was he? What's the story?
Well, the most, let's say, vivid origin story we have comes from the historian Sima Qian. He talks about Sun Tzu Wu from the Qi state.
Okay.
Apparently, King Ho-Lu of Wu heard about his theories on war and basically said, all right, show me. He invited him to court to test his ideas on managing soldiers.
And this test. It's pretty infamous, right? Involving palace ladies.
That's the one. Legendary and kind of chilling. The king asked, can you apply this to women? Sun Tzu said, sure.
So they bring out 180 palace ladies.
Yep. Divided them into two groups, put the king's two favorite concubines in charge of each. Sun Tzu gives them spears, explains the drill commands left, right, about face.
And they just laughed.
They just laughed. Didn't take it seriously at all. So Sun Tzu patiently repeats the orders, make sure they're clear. They laugh again.
And that's when things took a turn, a very sharp turn.
Uh-huh. Sun Tzu, apparently without missing a beat, orders the two leaders, the concubines, beheaded.
Whoa, just like that. The king must have freaked out.
Totally. Sima Qian says the king sent a message down basically pleading, look, I get it, you're good, but please don't kill my favorites. My food won't taste right without them.
Priorities. What did Sun Tzu say?
His reply was ice cold. Something like, I've received my commission as general. While on duty, there are commands of the sovereign I cannot accept.
Wow. He defied the king.
Stood his ground. The execution went ahead. And the result?
I can imagine. Silence and perfect drill formation.
Instantly. The remaining ladies followed every command perfectly, discipline established, and this brutal display, well, it worked. Wu became feared, King Ho-Lu got famous, and Sun Tzu got credit. It's a stark lesson in authority.
Incredibly stark. But it also makes you wonder, right, was this guy, Sun Tzu, even real? It sounds almost too legendary.
That's the big debate. Sima Qian, our main source for the story, was convinced he existed.
But
a major historical text from around that time, the TSO Tron, which details lots of events, says absolutely nothing about him, which is odd.
Yeah, that's a pretty big silence. So evidence against.
Puzzling. But there are earlier mentions. Huinanzi, writing around 122 BC, mentions Sun Tzu, and that's before Sima Qian.
Okay, so not just one source.
And maybe the most powerful endorsement comes later, from Emperor Cao Cao.
The famous general.
One of China's greatest military minds, yeah. He actually wrote a preface to his own edition of Sun Tzu. That's a huge vote of confidence from someone who knew warfare.
Right, that carries weight. A practical warrior valuing the text.
Definitely. And then there are arguments for authenticity based on the text itself.
Like what?
Well, you see consistent quotes from The Art of War popping up in different historical periods. And inside the book, there are clues.
Clues.
Yeah, like references to an old land tenure system or specific details about the war between the states of Wu and Ye. Those details help historians pinpoint the writing to somewhere between, say, 512 and 473 BC.
So it feels grounded in that specific time and place.
Exactly. It reads like it was written by a real strategist, a practical soldier dealing with the issues of that era, not like something cooked up later by someone in a library. It has that grit.
The grit of experience. Okay, so the book itself traveled through time. Did it change? How did people understand it over the centuries?
Well, like any ancient text, there's always a risk of corruption or changes over time. But thankfully, we had key commentators who helped preserve and interpret it.
Shaping our understanding today.
Precisely. People like Cao Kung, that's Cao Cao again, writing in the 3rd century AD. His notes are famously brief, very austere.
To the point.
Yeah. And then much later, Tu Mu in the 9th century. He was actually a poet, surprisingly. But his notes are extensive, full of historical examples to illustrate Sun Tzu's points.
Interesting. Different styles, different eras.
Exactly. And Ma Yao-chen, around the 11th century, another respected poet commentator, these guys weren't just clarifying words. They were showing how Sun Tzu's ideas resonated and were applied centuries later. It kept the text alive.
Okay, so let's get into the core ideas now. What's the absolute foundation of Sun Tzu's doctrine?
He starts right out of the gate, making it clear this isn't a game. The very first line sets the stakes.
Which is?
The art of war is of vital importance to the state. Simple, direct. Yeah. He follows up. It is a matter of life and death, a road either to safety or to ruin. There's no ambiguity. This is serious business. Survival is on the line.
Not just for states, right? You could apply that weight to, say, a crucial business venture or even a major life decision.
Absolutely. It frames the mindset you need. This requires your full attention.
So how do you approach something so vital?
He lays out factors, right? He does. 5 constant factors you must consider in your deliberations. Think of them as the fundamental pillars of strategy.
Okay, what's the first?
First is the moral law. This is about the people being in harmony with their leader, willing to follow him, even to death. It's that unity, that shared purpose and trust.
Like organizational alignment or team morale today?
Very much so. Without that buy-in, you're already weak. Second is heaven.
Heaven, like gods and fate.
Less mystical, more. Cosmic and environmental forces. Think night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. The big uncontrollable factors you have to work with are around timing, climate.
Got it. Market conditions, maybe? Seasonal trends?
Could be. Third is earth. This is the physical ground. Distances, danger, open ground, narrow passes, chances of life and death tied to the specific terrain.
The literal landscape, or maybe the competitive landscape, your operating environment.
Exactly. You need to know the ground you're fighting on. Fourth is the commander.
The leader, what about them?
Their virtues. Sun Tzu lists wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness.
Interesting order. Wisdom and sincerity come before benevolence or humanity.
Yet in this context, clear thinking and trustworthiness are paramount for a leader. Benevolence is important, but maybe secondary to sound judgment and reliability in crisis.
Makes sense. And the fifth factor?
Method and discipline. This is the practical stuff. The organization of the army, ranks, supply lines, controlling expenditure, the operational nuts and bolts.
Structure, logistics, budget. Okay, those 5 make a solid framework.
They do. And based on those, Sun Tzu gives you 7 questions, he calls them considerations, to basically predict who's going to win or lose before you even start.
Like a pre-mortem checklist.
Kinda, yeah. He asks things like, which ruler has the moral law? Which commander is more capable? Who has the advantages of heaven and earth? Whose rules are better enforced? Which army is stronger physically and morally?
Whose troops are better trained? Where are rewards and punishments clear?
Exactly. You go through these, comparing yourself to your opponent, and you should get a pretty clear picture.
And what's fascinating is how relevant those questions are outside of battle. You could ask these before launching a product, right?
Absolutely. Does our team believe in the mission? Is our leadership strong? Do market conditions favor us? Is our competitor better organized? Are our people well-trained? Is performance recognized fairly?
It's a really robust tool for assessing any competitive situation, not just military.
Or any serious undertaking, yeah. It forces you to look at the whole picture, internally and externally.
Now, if you had to pick one core principle from Sun Tzu, the one everyone quotes.
It's got to be deception, right?
All warfare is based on deception. Boom. Short, powerful.
Incredibly pithy. But it's not just about telling lies. It's much more nuanced.
How so? What are the examples he gives?
Well, things like, if you're strong, appear weak to make the enemy arrogant. If you're active, appear inactive. If the enemy is comfortable, make them restless.
If they're united, divide them.
Right. Attack where they're unprepared. Show up where they least expect you. It's about manipulating their perception and expectations.
So in business, it's not necessarily lying, but maybe strategic positioning, managing how you're perceived.
Exactly. Think about a negotiation. Maybe you downplay your urgency slightly, or you highlight a minor concession to make a bigger ask seem more reasonable later. It's about controlling the information flow and the opponent's mindset. Feigning weakness can stop a bigger player from bringing out their heavy artillery against your startup.
But that makes sense. It's psychological.
Very much so. But he's also intensely practical. He talks a lot about the cost of war.
Right, the economics. That's often overlooked.
Hugely important. He gives this figure, 1,000 ounces of silver per day for an army of 100,000 men. And that includes everything down to, like, glue and paint for repairs. It's a massive drain.
And he warns about dragging things out.
Absolutely. Prolonged campaigns are disastrous. Weapons get dull, morale drops, the treasury gets emptied.
And your rivals see an opportunity while you're tied down.
Precisely. His conclusion is blunt. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. None.
So speed is crucial.
Yes. He even says something counterintuitive, that sometimes stupid haste is better than clever long delays,
Why?
because even a clumsy quick victory saves resources and prevents exhaustion. A long, drawn-out, clever campaign might ultimately cost you more, even if you win tactically. The sheer expense ruins you.
That hits home for modern projects, scope creep, endless revisions.
Right, that drawn-out software development project that keeps adding features. Or the marketing campaign that's constantly tweaked and delayed.
They burn budget, exhaust the team, and maybe the market window closes.
Exactly. Sometimes getting something done, even if imperfectly, is better. Launching good enough quickly can beat launching perfect too late. It preserves momentum and resources. Count the cost. Be efficient.
Which seems like a good lead-in to what many see as his highest ideal. Winning without actually fighting.
Ah, yes. The pinnacle of strategy. Supreme excellence.
Well, it's the core idea there.
He puts it plainly. The best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is not so good.
Preserve, don't pulverize.
Right, and that applies down to the level of armies, regiments, even small companies. Breaking them is better than destroying them.
And the famous line follows. To fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence.
Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. That's the goal, making them yield without a costly clash.
Like the Moltke example at Sedan, winning through maneuver and pressure, not just battle.
Exactly. Pure strategic brilliance that minimizes bloodshed.
So how do you achieve that? What's the hierarchy?
He lays it out. The highest form of generalship is to balk the enemy's plans. Foil their strategy before it even gets going. Anticipate and counter.
Proactive defense. What's next best?
Prevent the junction of the enemy's forces. Isolate them from their allies. Cut them off.
Okay.
Third, then you attack the enemy's army in the field. Actual battle.
And the worst option.
The absolute worst policy, he says, is to besiege walled cities.
Why so bad? Seems like a standard tactic.
Because it's incredibly slow and costly. He talks about needing months just to prepare the siege equipment, the protective mantlets, the ramps.
All while your army is exposed and consuming resources?
Right, and you risk losing, he estimates, maybe 1/3 of his men in assaults. For a town that might not even fall. Think Port Arthur in the Russo-Japanese War. Horrific losses.
So it's a massive resource sink with a high chance of failure.
Yes.
Like trying to force a product into a market that just doesn't want it.
That's a great analogy. You pour money and effort into overcoming fundamental resistance, maybe ignoring easier targets, and you just wear yourself out. It's a battle of attrition you can't win.
Makes sense. So the general skill is crucial to avoid these bad strategies.
Absolutely. He calls the skilled general the bulwark of the state. If the general is complete, the state is strong. If the general is defective, the state is weak. Leadership quality is directly linked to national or organizational strength.
And he's very clear about how rulers can mess things up for the army, right?
Oh, yeah. He points out 3 specific ways a ruler can bring misfortune. First is hobbling the army.
Hobbling how?
By ordering an advance or retreat when they don't understand the situation on the ground. Commanding troops when it's just not feasible. It's like tying a racehorse's legs, he says. Micromanagement from afar.
We see that today, right? The executive demanding something from a team without knowing the realities they face.
All the time. It kills morale and effectiveness. The second way rulers cause trouble is trying to govern an army the same way they run a kingdom.
Applying civil rules to a military setting.
Yeah. It causes restlessness in the soldiers' minds. One commentator noted, you can't handle an army in kid gloves. Different domains need different approaches.
And the third mistake.
Using officers without discrimination. Basically, putting the wrong people in charge, not based on skill, but maybe favoritism or ignorance. This shakes the soldiers' confidence.
Nepotism, or just bad HR, undermines everything.
Completely. If you don't trust the person leading you, why would you follow them into danger? This applies everywhere, not just armies.
All these points about knowing the situation, knowing your people, knowing the enemy, it really builds towards his most famous saying.
The big one. Yes, it.
If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles.
Classic. And absolutely central. But people often forget the crucial follow-ups.
Which are?
If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer defeat. 50-50 odds. Not great.
The worst case.
If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Game over.
He uses Fuqian's defeat at the Fei River as an example, right? Underestimating the enemy.
A perfect example of not knowing the enemy. But honestly, I think more failures, in business or life, come from not knowing yourself.
How so?
Organizations failing because they didn't understand their own weaknesses, their internal conflicts, their actual resource limits, overestimating their own capabilities. That's just as dangerous, maybe more common.
That's a really good point. So the master strategist, the one who does know both, how do they operate?
Sun Tzu says something profound. The victorious strategist only seeks battle after the victory has been won,
Wait, after? How does that work?
whereas he who is destined to defeat first fights and afterwards looks for victory. It's about foresight. The winner creates the conditions for victory before the conflict even starts. They ensure they can't lose.
So they make themselves invincible first.
Essentially, yes. They put themselves beyond the possibility of defeat through careful preparation, positioning, understanding the situation, and then they wait for the enemy to make a mistake, to present an opportunity.
And because the victory was set up so carefully.
Their wins seem easy, almost inevitable. Sun Tzu says such a commander gains neither reputation for wisdom nor credit for courage,
Why not?
because the victory was obvious before the battle began. It wasn't a dramatic, risky gamble. It was the logical outcome of superior preparation. His methods are subtle, unseen.
Like water, right. He uses that analogy.
Exactly. Adapting, avoiding strength, striking weakness, constantly flowing and changing based on the terrain, the ground of the situation. Find the path of least resistance.
Let's shift focus a bit to the general's character. Sun Tzu warns about specific dangerous faults in a leader. These seem incredibly relevant beyond the military.
Oh, absolutely. These are timeless leadership traps. He lists 5. First is recklessness.
Just charging in.
Yeah, bravery without thought. It leads to destruction. Think of an entrepreneur burning cash on an idea without market research, just pure ego. Sun Tzu says you don't fight such a general head-on, you lure them into a trap.
Okay. Second fault.
Cowardice. This leads to capture. It's the leader who's too afraid to take necessary risks, always bent on returning alive, as one commentator put it.
Like the story of Juan Swan keeping an escape boat ready.
Exactly. His focus was on escape, not victory, and his army fell apart. In modern terms, maybe it's the manager who avoids a difficult but necessary decision because they fear conflict or unpopularity.
Third.
A hasty temper, easily provoked by insults. This leader can be lured out of position, made to make mistakes out of anger, like Al-Honi in this story.
Responding emotionally instead of strategically. Like a CEO getting into a Twitter war.
Could be, yeah. It reveals weakness and distracts from the real goals. Fourth is a delicacy of honor.
Meaning, too sensitive.
Yeah, overly sensitive to shame, slander, public opinion. A good leader, Sun Tzu implies, needs thicker skin when the mission is at stake, making decisions based on fear of bad press rather than what's strategically sound.
Prioritizing image over substance.
Right. And the 5th one is interesting. Over-solicitude for his men.
Wait, caring too much is a fault.
It sounds weird, but yes. It means being so focused on their immediate comfort or avoiding any hardship that you sacrifice strategic advantage. This exposes the general to worry and trouble, and ultimately harms the army more in the long run.
Like the attempts to relieve Ladysmith in the Boer War. Costly failures driven by concern for the besieged troops.
That's a classic example. Sometimes the tough, strategically necessary move causes short-term pain for the long-term win. A leader who can't make those calls because they're too worried about immediate morale might doom the entire enterprise. Sometimes you have to cut a project or restructure a team.
These 5 faults, they really paint a picture of psychological pitfalls in leadership.
Absolutely. They're about ego, fear, emotion, and misplaced priorities.
What about the general's relationship with the ruler? Sun Tzu has some bold things to say there, too.
Extremely bold. He basically argues for the general's autonomy on the battlefield.
How so?
He says, if fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight, even though the ruler forbid it.
Whoa.
And the flip side, if fighting will not result in victory, then you must not fight even at the ruler's bidding.
That's bordering on insubordination.
It sounds like it, but the point is about expertise.
Yeah.
The commander on the ground knows the situation best. Distant political orders might be completely wrong. It's about trusting the person you put in charge to make the right call based on reality, not policy dictated from afar.
Like the agile team needing to deviate from the original plan because they see the reality of the project?
Precisely. You trust their judgment because they have the ground truth.
Sun Tzu describes the ideal general in glowing terms too, doesn't he?
He does. He calls him the jewel of the kingdom.
What makes him so special?
Someone who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace. Their only thought is protecting the country and serving the sovereign well. It's the powerful image of selfless duty.
And how should this ideal general treat their soldiers? There seems to be a paradox there.
There is. On one hand, treat them like your children or beloved sons. Build that deep loyalty. He mentions Wu Qi, a general who apparently sucked pus from an infected wound on one of his soldiers to show his care.
Wow, that builds loyalty.
Definitely. Soldiers treated like that will follow you anywhere, even to their deaths. But
Yeah.
you have to balance that humanity with iron discipline. He gives the example of Lu Meng, who executed an officer for a seemingly minor infraction, taking a bamboo hat from a civilian because discipline had to be absolute.
So care deeply, but enforce the rules strictly.
Exactly. Humanity builds the bond, the attachment. Discipline makes them effective, useful. You need both.
And bringing it all together for victory, he adds to the know yourself, know your enemy idea.
He expands it. He says, if you know heaven and know earth, you may make your victory complete.
So add the environment, the timing, the seasons, the terrain to your knowledge of self and enemy.
Right. It's about total situational awareness, internal state, external opponent, and the context you're operating in. That's how you get complete victory.
Okay, let's dive into maneuvering and deception now, the actual movement and mind games.
Right. Sun Tzu points out that maneuvering can be a huge advantage if your army is disciplined.
But dangerous otherwise.
Most dangerous, he says, with an undisciplined mob. Trying complex moves with a disorganized force is courting disaster.
He talks about turning the devious into the direct, right? What does that mean?
It's about finding clever shortcuts, often by seeming to take a longer, harder route, turning misfortune into gain. It's the artifice of deviation.
Can you give an example?
Think about luring your enemy onto a path that seems advantageous for them, while you take a different, unexpected route to reach the objective first. Like Cao Shi fooling the Qin general with a slow march, then dashing ahead. Or Hannibal crossing the Alps totally unexpected turned the strategic situation upside down. Napoleon at Marengo, same thing.
Making your disadvantage look like an advantage, or vice versa.
Exactly. Deceiving through movement. But he warns against pushing too hard.
Right. The dangers of forced marches.
Yeah. He calculates that if you force march 100 li, maybe 30 miles without rest, pushing for speed at all costs, you might lose most of your army along the way. Maybe only 1/10 arrive fit for battle. Your lead commanders might get captured.
A costly advantage.
Very. And it highlights the absolute criticality of supply lines. He says, an army without its baggage train is lost. Without provisions, it is lost. Without bases of supply, it is lost. You can't outrun your logistics for long.
That feels so relevant to business rollouts or expansions.
Totally. Launching a product nationally before your support systems or supply chain are ready. Expanding into a new region without the infrastructure.
It's like that forced march. You might get there fast, but you can't sustain it. The whole thing collapses.
Right. You lose customers, burn cash, damage your brand. You didn't have the baggage train to support the advance.
Sun Tzu uses some vivid imagery to describe an army on the move, the 5 qualities.
Yeah. Those are great. Let your rapidity be that of the wind, your compactness that of the forest.
In raiding and plundering, be like fire. In immovability, like a mountain.
And finally, let your plans be dark and impenetrable as a night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. Speed, solidity, ferocity, steadfastness, secrecy, and decisive impact.
Powerful metaphors for strategic action. He also gets into psychology, right? Messing with the enemy's head.
Deeply. He talks about how to rob an army of its spirit or unsettle a commander's mind. A key is timing your attack based on their morale.
Attack when they're down.
Essentially. Strike when their spirit is sluggish and inclined to return home, not when it's keen and fresh at the start of an engagement.
Like the Cao Kui story, waiting for the drums.
The classic example. The enemy, the Qi army, beat their drums for attack once, twice. Cao Kui waited. Their initial surge of energy faded. On the third drum roll, Cao Kui ordered his forces to attack, catching the Qi army when their morale had dipped. Brilliant psychological timing.
He also gives some specific tactical do's and don'ts, like about pursuit.
Right. Crucial ones. Do not pursue an enemy who simulates flight. It might be a trap.
Makes sense. Don't take the bait.
Exactly. Do not swallow bait offered by the enemy. Also, do not interfere with an army that is returning home.
Why not? Seems like a good time to attack.
Because they'll fight with desperate courage. They have nothing left to lose and just want to get home. It's too risky. Let them go or manage it very carefully.
Okay. And maybe the most famous and strangest tactic surrounding an enemy.
Ah, yes. When you surround an army, leave an outlet free.
Leave them an escape route. Why on earth would you do that?
It's pure psychology again. If an army is completely trapped, with no hope of escape, they will fight with the courage of despair. They'll inflict maximum damage because it's literally do or die.
So by leaving a small escape route,
You give them a glimmer of hope. It prevents them from reaching that absolute peak of desperate ferocity. They might try to flee rather than fight to the last man, making them easier to defeat or capture as they break ranks. Fu Yanqing's story is a good cautionary tale of what happens when you don't leave an outlet.
that's fascinatingly counterintuitive. It applies to arguments too. Maybe don't corner someone completely.
Absolutely. Back someone into a corner verbally, leave them no face-saving way out, and they might lash out irrationally. Give them a perceived out, even if you control it, and you might manage the situation better.
He also talks about different types of ground, the 9 situations.
Yeah, basically analyzing terrain types and how strategy must adapt. Like on dispersive ground, your home territory, don't initiate fights. Focus on unity. On contentious ground, strategically vital, try to occupy it first. On desperate ground, where there's no escape, you must fight.
So the terrain dictates the tactics, like Hannibal using burning oxen to break out when he was trapped, adapting to the ground.
A perfect example of using the specific situation, even a bad one, to your advantage through cleverness.
Now here's something really surprising. Sun Tzu advises keeping your own troops in the dark.
Yeah, that one raises eyebrows. He says the general should keep his officers and men in total ignorance of the grand strategy. Use false reports and appearances to manage them.
Why? Wouldn't informed soldiers fight better?
His thinking seems to be about preventing leaks, maintaining surprise, and ensuring absolute obedience to the immediate plan without second-guessing. Stonewall Jackson in the U.S. Civil War was famously secretive, even with his own staff.
So the general carries the whole plan and everyone else just executes their part.
Pretty much. Sun Tzu says the general leads his army like he's taking them up a height and then kicks away the ladder behind him, or like he burns his boats and breaks his cooking pots after crossing a river.
Removing any option of retreat, forcing commitment.
Exactly. It creates that fight-or-die mentality when needed.
The Han Xin story really illustrates that, doesn't it?
Powerfully. He deliberately positions his army with their backs to a river, a supposedly terrible tactical position.
Putting them in deadly peril.
Right. His own officers thought he was crazy. But because the soldiers knew there was absolutely no escape, they fought with unbelievable ferocity and won a huge victory against a superior force. Sometimes eliminating the safety net is the strongest motivation.
Okay, that covers a lot of the how, but underpinning all of the strategy, all the maneuvering and psychology is something unseen. Intelligence.
The hidden engine. Spies. And Sun Tzu doesn't just mention them. He argues they are morally essential.
Morally essential. How?
He connects it back to the cost of war, the waste of time and general stagnation, the immense suffering. He argues that refusing to use spies, which could provide the foreknowledge needed to win quickly and save lives and treasure, is actually the height of inhumanity.
Wow. So not using intelligence is the unethical thing because it prolongs suffering.
That's his argument. A wise ruler, a good general, must use spies because it's the most humane way to achieve victory swiftly. In business terms, ignoring market intelligence or competitor actions is just willingly flying blind. It leads to wasted effort, bad decisions, potential failure. It's irresponsible.
And this foreknowledge they provide, it's key.
It's what allows leaders to achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men. But crucially, he stresses, this knowledge doesn't come from spirits or calculations.
No crystal balls.
No, it comes only from other men, from human intelligence gathering. It's about research analysis, networking, understanding people, not magic.
He breaks down spies into different types, right? 5 classes.
Yes. First, local spies, people living in the enemy district, your eyes and ears on the ground.
Simple enough. Second.
Inward spies. These are enemy officials you've turned. Maybe they're disgruntled, greedy, passed over for promotion, or just playing both sides. He warns you have to be careful with these, though. They can feed you bad info, like in the Potai story where feigned weakness led to an ambush.
Risky, but potentially high reward.
Third type.
Converted spies. These are the enemy's spies that you capture in turn, usually with bribes and promises. Sun Tzu says these are critically important
Why them specifically?
because they often have existing access and credibility within the enemy camp. They become your best source for recruiting other spies and verifying information. They are the linchpin.
Got it. Fourth.
Doomed spies. These
Hmm.
are grim. They're your own spies who you deliberately give false information, knowing they will likely be caught by the enemy.
So you sacrifice them to plant disinformation.
Exactly. They are doomed, but serve a purpose in misleading the enemy. And fifth, surviving spies. These are the ones who go into the enemy camp and actually come back with information. The classic movie spy image.
Right. And Sun Tzu emphasizes that the converted spy is the key to making the whole system work. You need them to find and manage the others. They must be treated with the utmost liberality. Invest heavily in them.
And how should you treat spies in general?
With extreme care and closeness. None in the whole army are more intimate relations to be maintained than with spies. Reward them generously. None should be more liberally rewarded. And maintain absolute secrecy. In no other business should greater secrecy be preserved. He even suggests mouth-to-ear communication.
Build deep trust. Pay well, keep it quiet. Sounds like managing critical informants in any field.
Absolutely. It requires sagacity, trustworthiness, and careful handling.
Yeah.
Leaking intelligence. The penalty is death, not just for the spy, but for the person who spread the leak.
Serious stuff. He saw this as fundamental to statecraft, right? Not just a battlefield tactic.
Definitely. He links the rise of ancient dynasties, like the Yin and Zhou, to their skillful use of specific master spies, Ichi and Luya, implying that top-tier intelligence was foundational to their success.
And his final word on spies.
A powerful summary. Spies are a most important element in water, because on them depends an army's ability to move.
Spies are like water.
Yeah, meaning they are essential, fluid, pervasive, and allow the army, the fish, to navigate and act. They are the army's ears and eyes. Without good intelligence, you're paralyzed.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a huge amount of ground here, from the legend of Sun Tzu himself, through the core ideas of planning, the cost of war, the ideal of winning without fighting.
The qualities and flaws of leadership, the art of maneuver and deception, adapting to the ground.
And finally, the absolute necessity of intelligence, of knowing the situation through spies. It really paints a complete picture of strategic thought.
It really does. And what stands out is that it's not just about brute force. It's about insight, preparation, psychology.
Knowing yourself, knowing your opponent, and knowing the terrain, literal and metaphorical.
That's the heart of it.
So the final thought for you listening. Sun Tzu teaches that great victory comes from subtlety, from meticulous planning, from that deep knowledge. Where in your own life, your work, your goals, even your relationships might you apply the wisdom of this heaven-born captain?
Where could you secure victory before the battle even begins? Or perhaps find a way to win without fighting at all?
Something to think about. We hope this deep dive has given you some powerful tools and a new appreciation for the art of war. Keep exploring, keep learning.